and we're definitely going to put to end this whole issue that came about, because really what led us here is when I went over those leaked messages between allegedly you and Steve, there was another creator who really battled me and made it a personal mission to prove that these messages were fake. They are not a fake screen recording app. They absolutely are proved to be legitimate.
Why don't we make it also clear that we screen shared my entire phone and I let you do whatever. She was like, touch this, click on this, because you can see if things are like edited or whatever. Like I literally told her she could log into my Facebook if she wanted. She can have it all. Like, just so y'all know, like I ain't got nothing to hide. I'm like, well, so what do you need from me? I went through, we sat on the phone for how many hours and just went through everything. Like these aren't
3.5 hours of screen recording.
These are in messages, going to the message, scrolling, clicking, whatever, you know, just to be really clear.
Hey guys, this is Jules. If you have been having your notification bell set to all for a while now, then you have noticed that over the past day or so, I have been posting screenshots from the conversation between Kaylee Goncalves' father, Steve Goncalves, and a TikToker by the name of Brett Norton. You guys, even if you have just recently shown up since we started talking about the 1112 cameras, have heard that name because we have gone through the story about Dot and Dot not being real, and the confessions that she herself put out, and Brett Norton's affiliation with that story, and about how she came out back in 2024 and admitted to everyone on a live stream all of the things that we have been talking about since, because she has admitted that all of these things were true. She was talking to Steve Goncalves. He was giving her information. She was then giving her information over to Howard, Blum, whatever, even though Steve Goncalves didn't want him to have any information. We're going to go over all that stuff in this because there's a lot of things stated that Howard, Blum, whatever came out and stated, and he acted like he had this great source and he didn't want to put the name out there because you know how they do things, and whole time it's Brett Norton going back and forth and feeding people information. We're going to go through some of these because these are things that were said by Steve Goncalves directly. And these are questions that he's had since right after the grand jury. And even now in January of 2026, after the plea change and the sentencing and the forensic documents coming out and the hours and hours of footage and the hours and hours of interviews and the thousands and thousands of pages of reports that we have poured over from the police, from ISP, from the courts itself, none of those questions are being answered. None of them. So I wanted to go back to what was stated specifically by him and continue asking the very specific questions and or proving that things that were being stated were not completely true. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, so I'm going to start from the beginning, but we're not going to stop on every single one of these messages. It shows the very beginning of the conversation thread. Hey, Steve, someone on my TikTok told me you wanted to see the screenshots of Pinterest for Costas. And again, this is the Mad Greek information that Brett Norton was speaking about with Melissa Jade. This is the information that the person that reached out to her said that Steve was interested in. And again, look at the date. This is less than a month after the grand jury that took place in 2023. And his reason was because some of the pages were deleted. Now, we're not going to go through that information. I am going to go down to the first message that I wanted to discuss with you guys, because the majority of the very beginning of this stuff is the Costas page from Pinterest. And I'm not going to be showing it on the screen because it's a lot of really disgusting, inappropriate things. And as you can see here, even Steve Goncalves thought that the things that were on that page were completely gross. And he thanked Brett for showing him this stuff because it was very concerning. If you saw it, then you know exactly what I mean. Now, it's really hard to see because it is blurry, because these are screenshots from, as you heard, a screen recording. The screenshots were done in order to try to get the actual pieces of conversation out that needed to be seen while we also had what Melissa Jade says is a 3.5-hour recording of these messages. Now, this looks to be, I think, July 5th, that this gets sent over to Steve from Brat saying, hey, have you seen Linda Lane? Now, this is where Steve says, yeah, but that SUV was there hours before, and at least it matches up with the white car being seen at 4:04. Now, again, this is just information coming out from the PCA according to the public, but Steve knew this information, as you're going to see, and if you saw my community post yesterday, Jack Decor is actually the person who got them the copy, or at least access to the 1112 King Road camera. So he would have had the camera footage. This is why I'm still questioning what he actually has on there, and you're going to see why the questions continue here in just a minute. Now, this is also where Steve is asking Brad if she ever heard anything regarding Dylan and Bethany. And then he says, we've talked to 2 grand jury members, and that helped calm the nerves a lot. Which I don't understand how that helped calm the nerves a lot with everything else he's going to claim about what the grand jury members actually told them. He then goes on to say, have you heard anything about the protected witness? Now, this is after he's mentioning Dylan and Bethany. The problem I have with this is that, as you're going to see along in these messages, and this is something that we've discussed already, Steve came out and basically told everyone on some YouTube channel or some news station, I don't remember which, but it was on a video. He said himself that he was going to be meeting with a witness at some point, and the FBI told him to back off. Now, again, in these messages, he's asking Brett Norton, have you heard about the protected witness, after he has asked if she has heard anything about Dylan and Bethany? Does that not make you think that there's a whole nother actual person? I don't know who this could possibly be, and I'm still really, dumbfounded by it, because we are now months and months and months past the guilty plea and the sentencing, and we don't know anything about this. Now, this is where I start to question what Steve Goncalves has when it comes to the 1112 camera, because you're going to see here in a minute that he tells Brett Norton that he has it, and again, they do claim that Jack Decor is how they got access to it. But this statement right here makes me question if he actually knew the truth about this or not. It's all on camera from what I've been told. His car, Murphy freaking out, him taking off at 4:21. Now, we know that all of that is on the 1112 camera. And we know, and as we're going to see here with even further proof, that the Goncalveses have had the 1112 camera, and they showed the 156 screenshot to Brett Norton, and she then came out and showed the world on her TikTok page when the Linda Lane information came out to claim that the sound and the audio from Linda Lane didn't match what he had. But for him to say, it's all on camera from what I've been told, tells me that he doesn't have this time frame from the 1112 camera. But that goes against everything else that we read and everything else that they've been told. So to say, from what I've been told, I don't know if he's saying that to try to not be completely honest with Brett Norton, which really would not shock me, or if he legitimately doesn't have all of the footage and only has the 156 segment. I don't know. They've never come out and been completely honest about, anything. And then it goes on to mention how they have to keep the witnesses under wraps. The FBI warned me they don't play games with protected informants, and they could be monitoring everything I say. We've noticed some quite odd communications behaviors, according to him. So again, he came out and even said this with his own face on a screen. I just don't remember if it was on a panel with another content creator or if it was mainstream media, but he did say this. This is where he mentions that James Patterson wanted to work with him. And the way that he words this is really super, super, super important, because at this point, we've already heard him mention the grand jury members to Brett Norton. So I'm going to verbatim read what he says here about Patterson. He says Peterson, but he means Patterson. Some other author wanted to work with us, Peterson, I think. Again, he means Patterson. And right here he says, the Peterson true crime guy helped connect us with a grand jury member. Again, he means James Patterson in these messages. We know that because of the book that came out. And for those of you who don't know, The reason why in this message up here, Steve is asking her, why did you stop working with Blum? Is because Brett Norton was working with Howard Blum, whatever. And even in the live that she did with Melissa Jade, when Melissa Jade asks her about this, she makes this face and then says,
and so chat also has some questions about Howard Bloom, and I know that you went over that a little bit earlier, how you noticed that possibly other creators were talking to him as well. Is that correct?
I know his other sources, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you have not been fired from Howard Bloom.
No.
And I can confirm also that, yeah, there's still communication there.
So as far as I'm concerned, and even though it's now 2026 and things could have changed, until I know differently, according to Brat's own words, even after all this insanity happened, she did not stop working for Howard Blum, whatever. As a matter of fact, regardless of what she tries to say, I will say that my opinion is that she was basically playing both of these people, and she was getting information from Steve to give over to Howard Blum, whatever, while telling Steve that she wasn't working for him. But we know, again, from Melissa Jade's live with her, that she very much continued to work with him even after all of this came out.
Steve said something along the lines of not wanting information getting back to Bloom, right?
Yes.
And you had said that you weren't working with him anymore.
I
so
wasn't.
At what point did you feel, because you eventually did start working with him again,
It's not like a working relationship. It's not like that, but I don't really feel the need to explain that to a bunch of strangers hating on me in your chat. I had randomly talked to Howard way later after the fact, and I had verbally said to him, well, listen, there's some stuff about a grand jury, and Dylan texting saying, I think someone unalived them. That's all I said.
Steve said something along the lines of not wanting information getting back to Bloom, right?
Yes.
Now, he's saying that the true crime guy helped him connect them with a grand jury member, but he mentions the fact that they actually contacted two of them. Now, this is where Steve Goncalves sends Brett Norton the 156 screenshot, where he claims they have the camera that proves, again, that the Linda Lane audio is incorrect. And this matched what they came out and told the public for months and months and months and years, that they had the girls on camera getting dropped off, blah, 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 all the things. Well, we know, since we are the channel that paid the $1,500 to get that camera footage, that there's no sound and you do not see the house. You see a car coming in, you see a car leaving, but we have no idea what's happening behind that camera. And because there's no audio, we don't hear car doors opening. We don't hear people getting out of the vehicle, walking across, going into the house. We don't hear their voices. We don't hear talking. We don't hear anything. So honestly, for them to come out and say, oh, we have footage of this has been incorrect this entire time, because no, they don't. And they've proven that by what they're telling Brett Norton here, what they actually did have. And that's where he says, there's another camera here that is way better that isn't public. Again, that's the 156 screenshot. And I will have a link to that footage down in the description box if you haven't watched it yet. But again, be wary, because 12:55 a.m. to 2:25 a.m., along with noon to 1:02 p.m. has no sound whatsoever. He then says, we had access to a few cameras and it's why we did the interviews. People wanted to help us. And I have to question his verbiage here. What does he mean by a few cameras? Does that actually mean a few cameras, meaning more than 11, 12? Or is this just him saying things? Because again, guys, I have fought back about the report that was written by Brett Payne when it came to his interview with Molly, the DoorDash driver. In it, he specifically is describing the vehicle pulling into the front parking lot area of 1122, Molly getting out to go deliver the DoorDash, and the white vehicle that they are considering SV1 pulling in behind her and then leaving. That verbiage very, very specifically paints a photo. So I specifically FOIA'd this information and I attached the report so they knew exactly what I was asking about. And I was told that I must have been talking about the 1112 footage, which no, I was not. Because the front parking lot that is being shown in the 1112 footage is the parking lot of 1112 itself, and then the house across the street, which is 1119. The 1122 house and the parking area that is a parking lot. Look how many cars fit in there and how many more possibly could, okay, is behind this camera angle. So if he can see these things in this report and I'm being told that I'm mistaken of the angle it's coming from, but then we have Steve Goncalves saying a few cameras and the only one we've ever actually heard him speak on is 1112, how are we supposed to not keep asking questions about this damn case? It's just astounding to me that the Goncalveses themselves can come out to the public in a Facebook post and tell us to actively stop reading documents, while they have had and have continued to have a million questions and are still not satisfied with the way the state handled the case. But now that all the transparency they've been demanding for so many years is finally happening, they're filing lawsuits full of inaccuracies. They're filing lawsuits full of lies. They're filing lawsuits full of things that the state themselves, the prosecution themselves, Bill Thompson himself, have stated in the courtroom, on record, on live TV, were false statements.
This discussion of the possibility she may have had a stalker, have police been able to stand that up, or not? They seem to be knocking that down.
Obviously, any of that information would be new to us as well. And she was extremely cautious. She was very vigilant. I think that she really would have noticed something and she would have said it to us. She wasn't, scared to get us involved in her life in any capacity like that.
The Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. That's false. You know that to be false. Which one? That Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. You knew that was false. For anybody who had never heard that before, that question is now planted into them. Unqualified representation that Mr. Kohberger stalked one of the witnesses, and that's false.
We do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area. There are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants.
I'm very confused about this entire thing. None of the actions taken by any side of this case are normal and accurate for what's actually happening here. I'm telling you now, the majority of us do feel like this is a Twilight Zone situation. This makes no sense. He then says here, I remember when Fry would just say both jacks have been cleared. We don't get that information anymore. So as of the grand jury, they weren't speaking to them whatsoever. And we know why. We know why. But this is also really super interesting because what else did we see when the forensic documents came out? That Jack Ducour had been listed as the #1 suspect the entire time. He is the name that is the first suspect, while Bryan Kohberger sits at number 2 on the forensic records all the way up until the plea, all the way up until summer 2025. Jack Tukur also did not have his fingerprints taken until May of 2025. So for him to have taken a lie detector and to have given his DNA, okay, cool. But when it came to his forensic download, I don't even know if they could do anything with it because the search warrants were all jacked up because the phone got played hot potato with, and the forensic lead over at MPD didn't even know about it when he called to check on the damn thing. So when it comes to how just completely unorganized this is, you have to question, is that the reason why they didn't instantly know that Jack Tukur was on a 17-minute phone call with Kaylee Goncalves that started at 2:26? The back-to-back phone calls and craziness started right after that 17-minute phone call would have ended. And there's no way that the phone just stayed open for 17 minutes and Kaylee just let it stay open for 17 minutes if Jack is just like sleep answering. Like, that's freaking impossible these days, especially with phones. You have to slide to answer. You don't just press a button and answer the phone. You have to slide it across your screen. So for him to have just answered it in his sleep makes no sense, especially given the fact that we see him getting home literally within a minute of Kaylee getting home. He would have had to have gotten in his house and been freaking passed the hell out to where he didn't hear or comprehend anything in like 20 minutes for that to even make any sense. And I'm sorry, no. But this is also where Steve is not honest about what's on those cameras. When it comes to Jack Tukur, he says, those cameras also show him entering his house and going to bed. Sir, what camera shows him entering his house and going to bed? The only thing that the camera shows is the car pulling in right as the vehicle that everyone is claiming is Eric Gower dropping off Maddie and Kaylee at 156 is going to leave the neighborhood. We see it go into the direction of Jack Tukur's house. We know from the interviews of the driver, his name is Peyton Rossi. We've gone over the interview several times at this point now. He is the one who is pulling in and dropping Jack and the roommates off. We do not see any physical bodies getting out of that car. We do not see anyone going into that house. The view does not allow us. And again, it is completely muted. So unlike the rest of the footage, we cannot hear car doors opening and closing and people talking and walking and nothing. So he's not being honest here about what those cameras show. Unless he knows for a fact that there is camera footage from another house that is being completely hidden from the public, he is not being honest. He also is not honest about the way that the layout is around that house. And it makes sense because it doesn't seem like they were there a lot, or at least Christy says she had never been to that house. I don't honestly know if Steve was over there a lot or not. I just know that Kaylee had only been in there for a few months. She moved in at the end of summer or like the beginning of August from living somewhere else. And it was the first time that her and Maddie had lived together. Maddie had lived there for quite a while before that. And Xana had also lived there prior, but not for very, very long. So when it comes to the layout, I don't know again how much Steve knew, but he is completely freaking incorrect in this statement. He means couldn't get to the house, but let me go ahead and just read it how he puts it. He could get to their house without being on camera, or at least not very easily. What he meant is he couldn't get to their house without being on camera, or at least not very easily, because that makes grammatical sense to the statement being made. But that's false, and he needs to retract it because honestly, he could get to their house without being on camera because the path that goes along the fence where the police actually had footprints leading from the back door goes straight to Jack Tukur's house.
And then we have we got some footprints coming from the back of the apartment. It looks like. Huh? Right down here? Yeah. So I'm trying to stay on the rocks.
But for him to also then say that BK is toast over the cast viz cell traces the grand jury members said, we also know is bullshit because Bill Thompson stood up at the guilty plea stuff and said this straight up to the judge.
We do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area. There are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants.
So no, because they can't accurately put Kohberger literally anywhere. And again, he could be in Pullman and be accessing these exact same towers because of the range and the way that these cell phone towers actually work. We learned that from a Gilter channel. Now, when it comes to Dylan, he said they shouldn't have even called them as witnesses. They didn't help at all. They created more questions than answers when it comes to Dylan and Bethany. Which is also interesting because didn't Olivia say that when she went down in like early October to talk to the state, that she left the state with more questions than answers? Isn't that the common theme here with this case? All questions, no answers. He then goes on to say they talked the whole time the shit was going down via texts. He then says Murphy was barking and growling for about 10 minutes, then he stops and the white car takes off. But that's not true, because we hear Murphy barking on the footage for, I swear the barking continues on for almost an hour, maybe a little bit more. But we also have realized from having our own unedited footage that there's multiple dogs barking. There's bigger dogs barking, there's smaller dogs barking, there's closer dogs barking, there's farther away dogs barking. You can hear the differences in the audio. So we don't actually truly know if the dog that was barking was Murphy or not, because we also see several dogs being walked as the sun starts to come up, knowing that there are so many dogs in that area. I need to know exactly how they know it was Murphy. And I say that I think there might be a way because we heard about a collar. Now, I don't know if it's an actual shot collar. I don't know if it's just a vibration collar, but apparently Kaylee had some sort of freaking collar on Murphy that did something if he barked. And that came straight from the damn police documents. It's not something being made up. I wish it was. I don't know. I don't know what kind of collar it was. All I know is that it exists. Do those collars come with apps? Do they come with something in the collar itself where they could take like some sort of chip out and they can see how often the dog had barked over the last 12-hour period? Because if that's the case, I would really love to know that. Now, I'm going to end this video here because there's so many of these and I don't want this to go very, very long, and I'm going to touch on every single one of these that I have until I'm done. Steve Goncalves says to Brett Norton, they told the author they wanted to go inside the house and hear things firsthand. This is about the grand jury members. The grand jury members in May of 2023 was telling everyone they wanted to hear inside the house. They needed to hear inside the home. The state already knew at the grand jury, not the actual trial, but at the grand jury, they were already saying, we need to hear inside the house. I want to go to the crime scene. I want to go to the house this took place in. We need to see it firsthand. Knowing that, they still destroyed the house. Before we even had a trial date set, they destroyed the house. They started at night. Well, let me say in the really early morning hours before the sun was even coming up, they started destroying this house. And they knew, both sides knew, the Goncalveses knew, everyone knew that the grand jury members wanted to see it firsthand, knowing that that was going to be a big, big, big thing come the trial itself. They still went through and destroyed the house. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Give me your thoughts on all of this down in the comments. And again, we're going to continue going through all of these messages until we're done. And yes, these have been discussed before. But now that the truth is out, now that the facts are coming out, we are going to be going back. And there's no reason to go back to anything except straight to the horse's mouth. So when it comes to Steve Goncalves and all the lies that he's already told, we're going to go back to when he was still asking questions. Because how do you say all of these things and then expect us to just still stand back just because somebody said yes to a couple of questions with no actual confession, no details, no statements, And the only excuse we're getting is,
in this particular case, there would be no way to corroborate or to validate anything the defendant might say. In fact, early on in this investigation, we had members of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, BAU, which are their profilers. They were here helping us with the investigation, and they even told us back in November of 2022, early December of 2022, that in all likelihood, whoever was responsible for these murders, the reason that the murderer did what he did would never be known, or if the person tried to say something, it wouldn't make sense to regular people, ordinary people, and likely be even more victimizing. So we elected to not try to pursue anything further.
I'm over all of this. I'm over all of this. And knowing that the family had all these questions then and that nothing has changed evidence-wise to today, how dare you sit there and be mad at us for still asking questions as you file lawsuits full of frivolous, proven lies to continue getting attention and fill your pockets on your dead daughter's name. We continue to fight. We continue to find truth.
How did you and Steve come about to having communication?
So this girl, let's call her E. You have her name, her whole name.
I'm
I know
gonna
a
pull
lot
it
of
up.
people have
Yep.
recently found her and tracked her down, and I know that she has told different creators, yes, that was me who reached out to her, reached out to me on TikTok and said, I'm trying to get a hold of you. Steve wants your information on Mad Greek or something about Mad Greek.
I made these redactions, and so I cropped out the person's face and I cropped out the person's name. This person reached out, and this was June 1st, 2023, and they said, hi. Then on June 2nd, I'm trying to reach out to you because I spoke with Steve. Because if this was a screen recording app, you would not be able to. I was telling her on this call, we were on the phone, and I said, tap this message, tap that message, pull this message to the left, pull it. Because if it was just a recording app, like the one Crime Sleuthin put out, you would not be able to do that.
Let me know what you guys are thinking about all this bullshit down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already. And please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.